When did creating joy for my kids become a battleground against the neighborhood's self-proclaimed queen of propriety? Join me as I discover just how far I'll go to defend their laughter. The sputtering sounds of my coffee maker filled the air as I perched on my back porch, watching my children dive into a world of imagination on their playground. The sunlight danced on the slides and swings, and their laughter floated on the gentle morning breeze like sweet music. So far, perfection in our little corner of suburbia. However, just as I reached for that second mug, a cloud rolled over us, and out of that darkening sky emerged none other than Karen Beasley, our neighborhood's self-proclaimed purveyor of propriety. Wearing her tailored navy jacket like a suit of armor, she stomps toward me, her blonde bob meticulously bobbing in rhythm with each striding step, hell-bent on ruining my scenic morning. Ah, yes, Karen. The HOA's enforcer of all things normal and respectable had arrived to point out in no uncertain terms how my children's joy clashed with her vision of community aesthetics. Jordan! She squinted at me like I was a particularly stubborn weed in her finely manicured flower bed. You know those playground structures are against HOA rules, right? They're an unsightly blight on our pristine neighborhood. Her words dripped with disdain, as if she were addressing a child who had forgotten to flush, and that precocious eyebrow of hers managed to reach new peaks of condescension. I felt my coffee start to boil again, not with heat, but with indignation, a bubbling pot of rebellion. This woman was truly on a mission, and the target was my family's happiness. Behind her stern tone and icy stare was the satisfaction of someone who thrived on controlling others, and honestly, she deserved an award for most likely to exercise fun from the neighborhood. I couldn't help but chuckle as I imagined her chanting her own version of an HOA prayer, calling on the spirit of dullness to preside over us. Does unsightly blight apply to the extra-large garden gnomes at the Johnsons' place too? I shot back, maintaining just the right amount of sarcasm to remind her that irony was still alive and thriving. Meanwhile, my children had ceased their joyful noise, wide-eyed, searching for signs that their beloved playground would remain intact. I gestured towards them, clarity slicing through my indignation. Karen, those kids are literally living their best lives. Why on earth would you want to destroy that? The brunch I had envisioned with friends felt impossibly far away now, replaced by this absurd showdown between entitlement and the spirit of joy itself. Karen's eyes narrowed further, convinced that I was somehow responsible for the shambles of her relentless HOA dictatorship. Your amusement park is an eyesore, and has no place here, she persisted, raising the bylaws as if they were the actual 10 Commandments. I wondered if she had ever realized that, like the commandments, HOA rules could be interpreted creatively. I could practically imagine hammering up a bold sign right next to the playset. Pleasure and fun zone. Karen Beasley not allowed. How poised and self-righteous could one HOA member get? Ah, yes. This situation was practically begging me to whip out my phone and start a TikTok series titled Karens vs. Kids, showcasing the absurdity of parenting amidst convoluted neighborhood politics. Now, that would be viral gold. Listen, Karen, I said, my patience wearing thinner than my kids' patience waiting for cake at a birthday party. This playground represents laughter, creativity, the sheer joy of childhood. Or are you too busy trying to chase away sunshine to remember what it feels like to be a kid? I leaned forward, unsure if she might burst into flames for my conviction. The backyard was meant to be a sanctuary filled with colorful imaginations, not a battleground for Karen's thirst for dominance. Tina, my brilliant partner in advocacy, had often reminded me that we had every right to joy, no matter how blurry the line is to those who view life through monochrome lenses. As I clutched my coffee cup, I could almost hear Tina chime in from the side. Let's not let Karen take away our fun. In a surprising turn, Karen's ire seemed to flicker just for a moment, but only to intensify as if she had recognized the flames of rebellion in my eyes. Oh, the audacity. I considered reminding her that the bylaws also mentioned community cohesion and harmony. You know, the very things she trampled on with her high heels when she stomped through my backyard. Suddenly, my morning was on a coaster ride of absurdity that I hadn't paid for, experiencing a bumpy blend of horror and hilarity. Was I really about to go to battle over a playground? Was this a scene from a sitcom, or was I truly living a suburban nightmare? Despite my rising blood pressure, I realized I needed to rally support, not just from my little munchkins, but the community too. If Karen was pulling out the big guns, so was I. With a mischievous grin on my face, I thought about the next neighborhood meeting. What if I encouraged every parent to bring their kids for a stand-up-for-fun parade? I imagined the jaws dropping around the table as I proposed that children's laughter could be the only acceptable soundtrack in our community. In stark contrast to Karen's dreary world of rules, perhaps it was time for a vibrant rebellion of color and laughter. "Karen," I said, a challenge bubbling at the edges of my voice, "what do you think the neighborhood would appreciate more? Your unwavering dullness, or a kaleidoscope of joyful chaos?" The battle lines had officially been drawn, and now it was time for some sweet justice. What could she possibly say to that? The moment I finished my mini manifesto, a wild idea burst to life in my mind. What if, instead of retreating, I gathered the troops for a backyard barbecue? The kind of gathering that would rattle the HOA's cages and send Karen spiraling into a deeply existential crisis about whether monochromatic taupe was the pinnacle of style. I could already envision a spread of sizzling hot dogs, burgers, and sides that screamed freedom in culinary form. Perhaps, just perhaps, I could win over some souls in the neighborhood with my own brand of rebellion. Come for the BBQ. Stay for the laughter and inevitable showdown with our neighborhood's cringe-inducing rule enforcer. I mustered my phone, tapping furiously to type a text invitation to Tina and everyone else I knew who would resonate with this hilarious act of defiance. Before I hit send, I started crafting the message that would go viral within our block. "Dear neighbors and fellow guardians of Kid Joy, join us in the fight against Karen's reign of terror. This weekend, we're throwing the ultimate backyard bash, potluck style. Bring something delicious and your best stories about HOA shenanigans. Let's unite over burgers, beer, and kid chaos while we strategize against the forces of opacity. Read. Karen." Unquote. I hit send quicker than my kids could ask for another popsicle, propelled by a wave of confidence and adrenaline. I could almost hear the rumbles of laughter echoing down the cul-de-sac as my neighbors responded with incredulous enthusiasm. "I'm in! Count us for the guacamole! Should we bring a banner?" Those were the reactions I lived for. Who knew parents could secretly harbor such a rebellious spirit? As the weekend drew closer, I watched my backyard morph from a peaceful haven into a blossoming festival ground. I hung up colorful streamers, a visual contradiction to Karen's gray-drenched vision of orderly sameness. I wanted the burst of colors to inject life into this suburban mistrust between order and creativity. I practically painted rainbows all over my yard in a desperate attempt to legitimize what we were about to do, deconstruct the belief that fun had to adhere to tedious protocols. My kids squealed with excitement as they helped me set up lawn games, hardly grasping the underlying social revolution they were about to embark on. Who knew they could unknowingly participate in the overthrow of a dictatorship dressed up in tailored navy? The day of the barbecue arrived, draping our quiet street in an unexpected celebration of hilarity. Parents awkwardly mingled with beers clutched in one hand and a plate of food in the other, laughter ricocheting off the walls of Karen's intimidating presence. More kids than I could count descended upon the backyard playground, their shrieks piercing the tension like joyful missiles against a fortress. From the corner of my eye, I saw Karen lurking, her body rigid, arms crossed so tightly she could have been practicing some bizarre yoga pose for supremacy. It was clear she was fuming, caught in a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief that this operation could even exist without mandatory beige. I felt a sense of comical satisfaction, reveling in the delicious absurdity of it all. Tina arrived just in time, nearly floating through the gate, with her radiant smile being the anthem of positivity we needed. "I brought the cupcakes," she declared, pointing to the multicolored box that practically shimmered with joy. "Nothing says, 'We won't let your HOA ruin our fun' like a cupcake." I couldn't help but laugh. The image of our neighborhood as a battleground made plump by sugar and laughter was too delicious to pass up. It wasn't just children swinging and laughing on the playground anymore. We were forming an army of parental defiance. As we chewed our grub and exchanged stories of HOA horror and parenting fails, a newfound camaraderie spread through the crowd. But, in the midst of this revelry, a crash of thunder echoed across the sky. Gloom descended like a dramatic movie scene, and we all turned to see none other than Karen Beasley, storming towards us like the human embodiment of a thundercloud. "What on earth is going on here?" she barked, her finger jabbing towards my makeshift party as if it were some kind of infectious disease. I could almost hear the mental gears grinding in her head as she struggled to comprehend how my yard, her sworn enemy, had been commandeered for undeniable joy. "This is against HOA rules," she sputtered, her tone dripping with indignation. "Oh, it was on." With a grin wider than the freshly frosted cupcakes, I stepped forward, determined to meet her storm head-on. "Oh, Karen, isn't it just the perfect day for a bit of rebellion? Join us while we bask in the glory of not taking ourselves too seriously. You have to appreciate the humor in nearly 50 parents banding together for a cause, no?" My voice was saturated in sarcasm as I gestured towards the chaos that now represented everything she despised. We're happy to share some snacks if you take your armor off. Or do you simply prefer the taste of tears from miserable children? It was a line that received more than a few laughs, a raucous affirmation of unexpected solidarity in the face of her authority. In that moment, with cupcakes, playful shouts, and laughter washing over our backyard, it dawned upon me. The playground wasn't just a cluster of slides and swings. It symbolized defiance against a control-freak regime. Who needed the rules of a boring HOA when joy and spontaneity were the colors of family life? As I faced Karen, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment our neighborhood would tip the scales toward fun. We were ready to battle, jocose with absurdity and armed with charm. Were we ready to take on the queen bee of entitlement and perhaps shake the very foundations of her monochrome rule? The theatrics of my confrontation with Karen Beasley reached a fever pitch. The swirling tableau of chuckles, gummy smiles, and carefree shouts of children left my heart racing with pure exhilaration. Here she stood, the maestro of disgruntlement, her nostrils flaring as she processed the sheer lunacy of the scene before her. "You think this is funny?" she snapped, her voice lifting higher than a disgruntled hen, as if the world would end if anyone dared enjoy life beyond her curated vision of tan perfection. "This is chaos." The sun glinted off her stern hairdo, sparks flying as she glared at me, clearly struggling to reconcile her adamant desire for conformity with the inexplicable joy radiating from my backyard. What a spectacle! Who knew suburban warfare could be so wildly entertaining? Tina, true to her supportive nature, swiftly leaped into the fray, hands on her hips, wearing the expression of a gladiator ready for battle. "Karen," she chimed with an almost melodious lilt, "your concern is touching, really, but we prefer a little chaos to the oppressive silence of your monopoly on fun." The audacity! I had to stifle a laugh. Who would have thought my neighbor was a liberator hidden in colorful summer dresses? I watched as she gestured animatedly, her curly hair bouncing like excited popcorn, inviting others to join her on the ramparts against HOA tyranny. Oh, now we were a band of joyful rebels. I couldn't help but appreciate her charm as she maneuvered around the troops, rallying the neighborhood behind her as if she was leading a revolution. Laughter bubbled up again amongst the crowd, an anticipated chorus overshadowing Karen's rants, embracing the delicious absurdity of the moment. My thoughts, however, began to swirl. How had her tyrannical reign persisted for so long? Did Karen think her hairdo alone could cape her into authority, shielding her from humanity's inherently wild nature? My rapt attention brought back the storm cloud of indignation in Karen's eyes. She wasn't used to being poked fun at, let alone challenged in broad daylight. Her bravado shrank against the rising tide of camaraderie that enveloped our block. If Karen was a modern-day villain, then the parents were the jubilant heroes. I could practically see the flashes of misunderstanding light up her face as she calculated her next move, like a cat cornered by a parade of excited puppies. Then the clouds grumbled again, as if echoing Karen's potential rebellion. Perhaps thunder was her secret sidekick. With a flourish, I decided to shift tactics. "Hey everyone," I bellowed, triumphantly raising my voice above the din. "Why don't we turn this little gathering into a contest? Let's see who can provide the best alternative to Karen's approved birthday party ideas." At this, spontaneous cheers erupted, and the momentum shifted. What was once fear was now excitement. I could see Karen's fierce glare flicker between bewilderment and boiling fury. "Oh, don't be such a spoilsport. Surely we're not the only ones who've thrown wild parties against the grain." It didn't take long for the kids to chime in enthusiastically, coaxing presents from their parents, scattering their ideas of mischief like confetti. "Perhaps we could try a pillow fight party, or even one where we smash piñatas filled with HOA regulations," suggested one of the kids, eyes beaming with mischief. The crowd burst into laughter once more, rallying around an innocent child who unwittingly threw down the gauntlet to Karen. She was visibly flustered, her eyes darting around, hunting for backing but finding none among the giggling masses celebrating their limited rebellion. At that moment, I felt triumphant, every neighbor galvanizing around the shared disdain for oppression, laughter becoming our secret weapon. Confusion danced across Karen's face, her authority slipping through her fingers like raindrops in a desert. Was this what disobedience felt like? I chuckled internally, savoring every moment of delightful pandemonium while we giggled at her expense. To celebrate true creativity, I cried out, shrugging off the humor-laden nonsense unfolding about. "Let's give out awards for the craziest party ideas." My declaration fueled the air, kicking our efforts into overdrive. Kids and parents alike began brainstorming in a delightful frenzy, bouncing ridiculous ideas back and forth while Tina snapped pictures to document this brilliant upheaval. I watched my neighbors, their faces illuminated with laughter, transformed from polite interaction into riotous enthusiasm. It was a sight to behold. No, this was not merely a backyard barbecue now, but a veritable carnival of wild suburban dreaming, scaling the limits of Karen's rigid authority. In the midst of our delightful uproar, a sense of achievement washed over me. Who knew that a simple act of defiance could evoke such freedom? I stood shoulder to shoulder with my neighbors, defiant and loud, while Karen's imposing silhouette lingered on the periphery, absolutely exasperated, confused, and completely unarmored in the face of over 20 delighted neighbors, collectively dismissing her reign. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but the cacophony was so relentless it left little room for her arguments. Perhaps this gathering would be the tipping point. Perhaps tonight, we would shift the playground's fate with hearts united against monochrome tyranny. Would the spirit of chaos triumph over Karen's compliance, or would she gather the forces of HOA and seek revenge in some dreadfully drab and hilariously misguided mission to suppress this infectious joy? As we launched into the chaotic brainstorming session, the excitement transformed my backyard into a veritable explosion of creativity. Children pitched their ideas like it was an audition for a game show. "A chocolate fountain party!" one shrieked. "No, a treasure hunt with actual treasure," another added, eyes sparkling with possibilities. This was it, the liberation of every ounce of joy previously suppressed by the looming shadow of Karen Beasley. I swear I could feel the air vibrate with electric anticipation as adults exchanged stories of guerrilla birthday parties long past, rescue missions for wayward piñatas executed in secret, and home videos of the disaster that was hot sauce tasting day. Each laugh felt like a defiant anthem, celebrating the kind of joy that Karen loathed. Who knew an ordinary afternoon could morph into a community art installation titled Kidhood Rebellion Against HOA? Tina, beaming with that infectious enthusiasm of hers, leaped into the fray, declaring, "Let's not just stick with a party, we'll host a Playground Appreciation Day event. We'll showcase the virtues of creativity, color, and good old-fashioned fun. Those who wish for a little excitement in their lives will be forced to join us." At her words, the idea took on a life of its own, spiraling into a full-blown celebration rallying every neighbor to his or her feet, each one committing to contribute with a signature dish or delightful activity. My heart swelled with pride watching the friends I had made in this cul-de-sac band together to embrace a new kind of normal, one that thrived on joy rather than strict adherence to Karen's color palette of beige and taupe. Who would have thought that the very figure of authority would soon be banished to the sidelines of our jubilant spectacle? But it didn't take long for Karen to recalculate her strategy. Watching the beautiful chaos unfolding before her, I could practically see gears grinding in her head, wrestling with both embarrassment and outrage as the crowd grew increasingly jubilant. She took a deep breath, seemingly summoning her remaining dignity as she puffed out her chest. The audacity of the woman. Did she really think she could swoop in like an avenging angel and dampen our spirits? "You might want to consider the consequences of your actions, Jordan," she bellowed, her voice tinged with a hint of desperation. "This is not how adult neighbors should behave." Cue the chorus of laughter from the opposing side. Her stern expression must have made her feel like she was arguing with a marching band of anti-conformity. "Oh, Karen, Karen," I countered, winking at the crowd to prepare them for the ultimate showdown. "Allow me to enlighten you. This is called community bonding, a practice that involves enjoying life, mixing in a little chaos, and overwhelmingly ignoring your disdain for colorful experiences." Cheers erupted, fireworks exploding in my mind as each voice added an exhilarated "yes" to my rebellious proclamation. The sparkle in everyone's eyes, the flickering laughter from the sidelines, even the kids readying their best impersonation of a conga line. Oh, it was glorious. What was Karen's next move? Complain that the color of our laughter was too loud? The very idea made me chuckle audibly, as if I was taking in the delicious irony of her trying to crush our enthusiasm using mirthless words alone. The atmosphere was electric, each second feeling like we were nearing the pinnacle of suburban insurrection, the thrill of possibility bubbling fervently in the air. I surveyed our gathering. My neighbors, usually wary shadows in the grand performance of Karen's HOA soap opera, had finally shed their roles as silent backups. "Let's take a picture," Tina directed, whipping out her phone and rallying everyone for a snapshot of our newfound unity. As I squeezed in between my excited friends, I caught a glimpse of Karen in the background, arms crossed, her jaw clenched tight like an unwilling participant in a jigsaw puzzle. "Say, HOA rules need to chill," Tina commanded with an impish smile, snapping the picture as laughter cascaded through the crowd like ripples across a calm lake. Unbeknownst to Karen, she was standing on the outskirts of what felt like history in the making, a delightful reminder of how delightful chaos could rival the constructed silence of compliance, especially when fueled by children's laughter. "We should send a copy to the HOA board," I shouted, raising my voice above the jubilant din. The applause that followed felt like a spontaneous explosion of joy. This was it. Symbolic footing for our Declaration of Independence forged in colorful balloons, piñatas bursting with candy, and an overwhelming sense of defiance swirling around us. Whether it be my playset or a completely unregulated grizzly bear-themed neighborhood party was of fewer concerns than the bubbling camaraderie that energized us all. In that moment of raucous revelry, it hit me. My relationship with the HOA had irrevocably changed. No longer was I merely a player on the board, trying to avoid Karen's wrath. I had embraced the role of a catalyst for change. Perhaps I'd find a path toward community-wide joy, a new way of life washed clean from the stain of oppressive compliance. Would there be resistance? Surely. Was I ready to face it? Absolutely. So, with laughter echoing like battle drums in my ears, I looked at the smiling faces reflecting my newfound destiny, ready to take on whatever absurdity Karen could possibly conjure next. What delightful upheaval awaited us in this splendidly chaotic playground saga. The night before the big court hearing loomed over me like an impending thunderstorm, my stomach a tempest fueled by equal parts excitement and anxiety. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by box after box of donuts, their sugary shells glistening with an almost angelic sheen. "What a glorious form of sustenance!" I exclaimed to no one in particular, as I shoved a chocolate-frosted ring into my mouth, each bite fueling my rebellious fire against the iron grip of Karen and her HOA. This wasn't just a battle to keep my kids' playground intact. It was a crusade backed by fellow warriors from the neighborhood, armed with homemade cookies and an overflowing measure of solidarity. "Bring it on, Karen," I muttered, envisioning her sharp bob-like haircut gleaming under the courtroom lights, as she would inevitably come at me with her battalion of stiff, overzealous lawyers. After all, what was more thrilling than a messy courtroom melodrama, complete with all the classic tropes, a stern judge, whispering lawyers, and a single dad hell-bent on maintaining his kids' happiness? As the clock ticked on towards dawn, I felt something peculiar. It was as though a tornado of emotions was swirling around in my chest: fear, excitement, and a tinge of humor that might just perform its own preemptive strike against Karen's disapproving glare. My speech, crafted through hours of enthusiasm mixed with a sprinkle of caffeine, rolled off my tongue in exaggerated practice sessions. "My sweet, innocent playground shall not fall to your oppressive reign," I declared, nearly collapsing in giggles at my own melodrama. This wasn't merely about swings and slides. It was the very heart and soul of childhood, wrapped up in this heroic little yard that took so much love and laughter to build. I would stand on a mound of donuts if it means fighting for my child's joy. I'd imagine myself teetering on a mountain made of pastry delights, only to burst into laughter again. Because what else could a parent do when faced with a Karen intent on extinguishing every ounce of fun in their life? The morning sun peeked through my kitchen window, glimmering off the heroic donut boxes like a beacon of hope. I knew I had to gather my thoughts and muster up the confidence of every mom who had ever showcased a Pinterest project gone wrong. Arriving at the courthouse, it felt as if I was entering a coliseum, the tension practically crackling in the air. Everyone seemed to belong to some unspoken hierarchy, the high-powered lawyers dressed in their sharp suits, and Karen, of course, with her formidable navy attire that screamed, "I order people around for fun," but I was no longer the nervous dad in cargo shorts trying to appease the HOA. I had transformed into the fearless champion of childhood freedom, courageously marching into battle armed with donuts and a pack of neighborhood supporters who, I was sure, could throw confetti in the face of tyranny if it came down to it. As I took my place at the front, flanked by my motley crew of allies, I felt the surge of electricity darting between us. My heart threatened to explode as I caught sight of Tina in the crowd, giving me a thumbs up and enlisting every ounce of my determination. Sure, I was the one who had to speak, but we were all in this together. "Let's show these uptight folks what joy looks like," I declared in hushed tones, the intensity building. Then it was my turn to take the stand as I recounted the joyous laughter and boundless enthusiasm radiating from every child who bounced around in the backyard playground I had built. I peppered my passionate argument with delightful anecdotes of neighborhood shenanigans, involving an impromptu slip and slide, and the chaotic festivities of our newly developed Playground Appreciation Day, all while Karen glared at me with the intensity of a hawk honing in on its prey. Karen, of course, came next, a whirlwind of condescension wrapped in tailored fabric. Her voice, dripping with disdain, was sharper than a knife. "Your actions are reckless, Jordan. Playground safety and HOA rules must come first," she barked, causing laughter to bubble from my supporters. There was something perverse and delighting in her disapproval, knowing our neighborhood had united against her iron grip. I leaned into my counter-argument, reminding the judge that childhood was far more than rules and regulations. If we live like Karen wants us to, I gestured theatrically, our children would end up as mere cardboard cutouts, devoid of color and creativity. As I spoke, I pictured Karen's face swishing red, like a penalty flag thrown in sports. With every sentence, I could feel my community rallying tighter behind me, a vibrant tapestry of love and joy destined to outshine any monochromatic vision Karen had for us. The judge listened intently, weighing my words with that inscrutable look judges often possess, one that felt more powerful than any magic spell. It was at that moment, with my friends beaming encouragement from the bench like shining stars in a night sky, that I realized we were already winning this battle. Joyful memories created among neighbors are the backbone of a successful community, I boldly proclaimed, quaking only slightly. Wouldn't it be a tragedy to snuff out childhood laughter in favor of austere regulations? There it was, the pièce de résistance, a question draped in emotion and purpose, begging for the judge's validation. The energy in the room transformed from stiff fear into vibrant enthusiasm, a glorious rumbling that implied change was possible. As the judge prepared to announce their decision, the anticipation was palpable. Everyone was leaning forward, hands clasped, not a single soul breathing audibly. This was it. All the laughter, creativity, and explosive community spirit clashed with the hovering specter of Karen and her cushioned rules. The judge finally cleared their throat, and for that fleeting moment, the world felt suspended in limbo. After reviewing the case, their voice rang out, steady as an anchor. I believe that children's joy and the vibrancy of community should indeed prevail over strict compliance to the rules. The applause erupted like fireworks on the 4th of July, shattering not only Karen's pompous bubble, but paving the way for a new, colorful chapter in our neighborhood's story. Yes, sweet justice had been delivered, and I was finally free to embrace the joyful rebellion of childhood spirit once again. What delightful adventure awaited us next? The gavel sounded sharply, echoing through the courtroom and concluding what felt like the longest ride on a roller coaster of emotions. Sweet victory washed over me in waves, and I could hardly contain my exuberance. I could see Karen's stern face morph into a mask of disbelief, her carefully crafted facade crumbling before her eyes like a stale cracker. "In your face, Karen," I thought gleefully, my heart racing with the electric thrill of triumph. The courtroom buzzed around me, children, parents, and friends all breaking into applause, a cacophony of joy reverberating off the austere court walls. Even the judge, for a fleeting moment, seemed to stifle a smile as my allies erupted into laughter and cheers. It felt like a joyous uprising against an unyielding regime, a guild of parents declaring that sometimes playgrounds should trump paperwork. In the midst of the joyous celebrations, I managed to catch Tina's infectious energy, her curly locks bobbing as she embraced me with a strength I didn't know was possible for someone so petite. "We did it, Jordan! I can't believe it!" she squealed, her delight like confetti exploding in the air. My heart swelled with gratitude as I looked around at the familiar faces of my neighbors, people who had come together like a beautiful mosaic of support, laughter, and creativity. No longer were we defined by the confines of HOA regulations. Instead, we were champions of childhood, vibrant advocates for laughter and joy. "This is just the beginning," I declared, wrapping an arm around Tina as we made our way out of the courtroom with our heads held high. It was time to reignite the spirit of fun that had been threatened, and I was more than ready for the adventure. As our little parade of victory, complete with kids twirling and squealing, filed out of the courthouse, I couldn't help but gloat with laughter as I imagined Karen's face. What a sight to behold! I would later recount to my friends, her perfectly coiffed hair just about flatlining. The thought sent me into peals of mirth. Step by step, I could feel a new chapter of parenthood unfolding, one that was bound to be overflowing with absurdity and laughter. I couldn't wait to rally my fellow parents for what I envisioned as an epic backyard carnival, complete with slip and slide races and competitions for the best homemade carnival treats. Clearly, there were donuts left over, and I planned to use them in all sorts of creative ways. Maybe a donut ring toss? Or who wouldn't want a donut eating contest to herald our newfound freedom? Of course, not every battle yields immediate adversaries, and as evening descended into our neighborhood, I half expected a sulking Karen to stage some sort of half-hearted "I told you so" lament from her window. But instead there was only silence. My truest adversary had been vanquished for the moment, but I could feel her presence still looming like a dark cloud on the horizon. One of these days, she'll come back for her slice of tyranny, I thought dramatically, bracing for the storm to brew once more. For now, though, the air smelled deliciously like freedom and freshly cut grass, and the sun painted my backyard in hues of anticipation. Could I dare hope this playground could stand tall against any future encroachment? Setting up for the backyard carnival was the next phase of our victorious rebellion. I enlisted the help of my fellow warrior parents, who showed up armed with rolls of brightly colored streamers and more oversized inflatable toys than I knew what to do with. The energy buzzed between us as we transformed my modest backyard into a whimsical wonderland. Swings were festooned with ribbons that fluttered like tiny flags of joy, and the slide became a majestic tower dripping with enthusiasm. I couldn't wait to unleash what Tina dubbed the best dent in the HOA's conformity armor. Buzzing with laughter, we tried to outdo each other with ridiculous games. I envisioned stations called Attack of the Water Balloons and Catch the Donut on the Stick, all of which would serve as magnificent distractions from any Karen-like thoughts haunting the event. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over our glorious carnival, children's laughter echoed like sweet music. I marveled at how this day was a direct counter to everything Karen stood for. A whimsical show of creativity and unity. It felt so good to celebrate imagination as laughter filled the air like a fragrant perfume. Tina was hosing down a group of kids who had just demolished an inflatable slide race and were scrambling back for another round. Pure mayhem, blissful and chaotic. Off to the side, I spotted my neighbor Steve, attempting to set up a mini donut toss game, but he seemed more intent on tossing donuts at Tina than keeping score. I chuckled, strategic mischief. Finally, I gathered everyone together, cupping my hands around my mouth and projecting over the delightful chaos. "Attention, carnival goers!" I hollered, attempting a grand flourish in spite of my uncooperative breath. "Let's celebrate not just our playground, but also this amazing community. Thank you all for refusing to let anyone dictate what joy looks like." Whistles and cheers erupted like fireworks, colors flaring together for one final celebration of rebellion. I could hardly believe how far we had come, and yet knew the adventure was only beginning. Will this be our new normal? Is there a way to keep Karen at bay while also enjoying the vibrancy of our neighborhood? I smiled widely, overflowing with uncontainable optimism for the many joyful moments still to come. Later that evening, as our carnival began winding down, I found myself sitting on the grass, grinning like a kid who had just discovered the last piece of candy at the bottom of a jar. The laughter of children still echoed around me while the sky transitioned into a tapestry of twilight colors, settling into soft pastels. We had successfully forged a fortress of fun in direct defiance of Karen Beasley's draconian HOA regulations. I could still hear Tina enthusiastically recounting the day's shenanigans, her expressive hands dancing through the air as she riffled through the highlights: balloon toss failings, donut wobbles, and an utterly ridiculous pie-eating challenge that devolved into a friendly food fight. That's right, my backyard had transformed into a chaotic wonderland, and honestly, I couldn't have been prouder. But just then, as if summoned by my triumphant thoughts, I felt a chill sweep over the yard. A dark shadow loomed over our festival of freedom, and I instinctively glanced over my shoulder. There she was, Karen Beasley, dressed in her trademark grays and navy, stomping across the grass like an ill-tempered rhinoceros. I could practically hear the dramatic score cueing her entrance. Who invited the storm cloud anyway? Of course, because nothing screams fun like a Karen arrival, I thought, rolling my eyes. She approached with an expression that was a delightful mix of horror and disbelief, as if she had just stumbled upon a secret rave for children without adult supervision. I braced myself for the avalanche of passive-aggressive rapping that emerged from her tightly wound persona. "Oh, I see we've taken the liberty to disregard the association's guidelines yet again," Karen drawled, adjusting her oversized sunglasses as if they could shield her from the vibrant neighborhood joy around her. "You do realize that this," she gestured to every swing, slide, and happy child, "is not permitted under the recent bylaws, don't you?" Her voice dripped with condescension, and if there were awards for dramatic flair and ridiculousness, she would be a shoo-in. I leaned back against the yard sign. "Welcome to the Festival of Fun," grinning from ear to ear. ready to let her words roll off my back like rain on a duck. "Listen, Karen," I chirped, "you might want to check your bylaws in a funhouse mirror. They might look quite different when seen through a lens of joy." The audacity of my own words surprised me, but seeing Tina stifling a laugh beside me emboldened my stance. "Bylaws?" I continued, motioning towards the laughing flock of children tussling in the nearby mud. "Seems to me like we're cultivating memories and friendships over here, which is a solid counter to your HOA's dry, corporate approach to neighborhood living." Karen's face twisted in indignation. It was almost a performance worthy of Oscars. I half expected a recorded sad trombone sound effect to punctuate her reaction. "This is not how neighborhoods should operate, Jordan," she protested, arms crossed tight across her chest. The lecture thing. Couldn't she just let a little vibrancy exist?" "You're absolutely right. Neighbors should be working together." I clapped back, enjoying this dance of words far more than I ever anticipated. "Togetherness means creating space for community, for joy, like hosting epic carnival nights in defiance of authoritarian bylaws." I felt on fire. The glee radiating around me infused me with inexplicable courage. I gestured grandly toward the circle of joyous kids. "Look! These little warriors are learning what it means to fight for happiness with inflatable sword battles." A child nearby brandished a soggy donut as a weapon, which honestly felt like the perfect metaphor for our uprising against Karen's suppressive rule. As she sputtered incoherent statements about authority and standards, I couldn't help but internalize how absurdly entertaining this situation had become. This was less a face-off about bylaws and more of a showdown between playgrounds and Karen's warped notion of perfection. Suddenly, a child sprinted over, donut weapon in hand, launching a sugary splash into Karen's perfectly coiffed hair. In that moment, a delightful silence fell upon the yard as even Karen's staunch expression cracked. Her indignation had met its match. She stood there, confusion flickering in her eyes as the kids erupted in delighted laughter. "You see, Karen," my voice rang out, "emotions can be messy, just like this donut explosion." And as laughter resonated, the absurdity of it all crashed over me like a tidal wave. Moments later, I felt a wave of camaraderie wash over our little carnival as parents began to gather around, their faces filled with glee and newfound bravery. I could see the fire of defiance igniting inside them too. This isn't just about a playground, I realized. It's a community reborn from the ashes of boredom fueled by a cranky HOA member who had underestimated the power of unity. I declared triumphantly, "Karen, we're not only standing for the playground, but for what a neighborhood should feel like, joyous, authentic, messy, and glamorous in all its chaos." And in that moment, I knew for certain, Karen Beasley might be the self-proclaimed ruler of our neighborhood, but our carnival would forever be the rallying point for community joy. Laughter filled the air, reflecting that night's whimsical riot in direct defiance of Karen's po-faced ideals. "What's your next move?" I challenged her playfully, holding out a donut aloft like a scepter of rebellion. "May I interest you in our sucker supremacy cakewalk? Or perhaps you'd like to join our donut dodgeball league?" Laughter erupted, the like of which could drown out even the grouchiest HOA board member. The community had found its voice, and the incorrigible Karen was no match for the harmony of our neighborhood. How could she ever comprehend the endless joy that comes from a carnival of fun?